Researchers examined 53 brain samples from people who had Alzheimer's disease. They were looking for a toxic enzyme produced by a specific bacteria, one usually associated with gum disease, not the brain. They found it in 96% of those brains. Not a rare finding, not an occasional trace. In nearly every sample examined, a bacterial toxin that started in someone's gums had ended up in their brain. Here's the detail almost nobody connects to their own daily routine. That bacteria's most direct path into your bloodstream is often the exact moment you're cleaning your teeth, if inflammation is already present. One habit, backed by a cohort of 2.5 million people, and a mechanism explaining exactly how a mouth problem becomes a brain problem. That's what this video is about. No supplement, no new product. Something already sitting in your bathroom cabinet, most likely used incompletely, if at all. This video walks through exactly what that habit does, and why it matters this specifically, including one commonly recommended product that may work against part of this mechanism, and 2 ordinary foods already familiar from earlier videos here that support the same tissue from a different direction. Here's what most people believe about flossing and brushing. It's about cavities, it's about bad breath, it's about keeping your teeth into old age. That's the whole conversation most of the time. None of that is wrong. Every one of those reasons is real. But treating oral hygiene as a teeth-only concern misses an entire second system this channel hasn't covered before. Your mouth isn't sealed off from the rest of your body. It's one of the most direct, unguarded entry points you have. Here's what that teeth-only framing leaves out. Gum disease isn't just a local irritation, it's a chronic inflammatory condition. Specific bacteria involved in it have a documented, if not fully settled, path toward your brain. Not a metaphor, an actual physical route. Through broken gum tissue into your bloodstream, then toward tissue protected by one of your body's most selective barriers. Here's the number worth sitting with. A cohort of over 2.5 million people, tracked through South Korea's national health insurance system. Gum disease was associated with a measurably higher risk of dementia. Frequent brushing in the same massive data set was associated with a measurably lower risk. Both numbers were statistically real, even though, and this matters, neither one was dramatic. This matters specifically after 50. Roughly 70% of people over 65 have some level of gum disease, often without realizing it since early stages rarely cause pain. A condition this common, quietly connected to a fear this common, it deserves more attention than brush twice a day usually gets. Here's the part that changes the entire conversation. This isn't about scaring you into flossing. It's about understanding an actual physical mechanism connecting your mouth to your brain. One most people have never heard explained. This matters for a second reason too. One rarely discussed alongside dementia risk specifically. Your mouth doesn't only host bacteria connected to inflammation and disease. Certain species there perform a genuinely useful job, converting dietary nitrate into compounds your blood vessels depend on. Wiping out oral bacteria indiscriminately, not just the harmful ones, carries its own cost. A detail this video returns to later. Nearly half of all adults have some form of gum disease. By age 65, that figure climbs to roughly 60%. This isn't a rare vulnerability affecting a small minority. It's closer to the default state most people over 50 are already managing. Whether or not it's ever been diagnosed by name, there's a practical reason this connection stayed unfamiliar for so long. Dentistry and neurology developed as almost entirely separate medical specialties. Separate training, separate journals, and until recently, little reason to compare notes. The mouth-brain connection isn't a secret being withheld. It's simply information that fell into the gap between two fields that rarely talk to each other. The question worth sitting with is simple. What is that mechanism exactly? And how strong is the evidence really behind it? Here's the mechanism, in plain terms. Your mouth hosts around 700 species of bacteria. Most of them cause no problems. A specific few, when gum disease takes hold, do. Porphyromonas gingivalis is the bacteria most closely studied here. It produces toxic enzymes called gingipains. It's the same bacteria found in that 96% of examined Alzheimer's brains mentioned earlier. Researchers proposed two separate pathways connecting it to your brain. The first is inflammation. Gum disease is itself a chronic inflammatory condition, and inflammatory molecules produced there don't necessarily stay local. They can circulate throughout your body. Some research suggests they add to the broader inflammatory state now considered part of Alzheimer's itself, not just a symptom. The second pathway is more direct, and it's the one connecting straight back to a daily habit. When gum tissue is inflamed, it becomes more permeable, sometimes literally breaking during normal brushing or flossing. That temporary opening gives bacteria like P. gingivalis a route directly into your bloodstream. From there, in animal research and some human tissue studies, it appears capable of crossing the blood-brain barrier. A protective structure this channel hasn't discussed before now. Here's the detail worth sitting with carefully. This means inflamed, untreated gums create exactly the vulnerable condition this bacteria needs. Healthy gums, even during normal brushing and flossing, don't offer that same open door. The mechanism isn't an argument against oral hygiene. It's an argument for treating existing gum inflammation seriously, specifically because irritated tissue is the entry point. It's worth being precise about where the evidence stands. The gingipains finding in brain tissue is real human data, though from a modest sample of 53 brains. The direct bacteria crosses into brain mechanism has stronger support in animal studies than in humans specifically. This video stays honest about that distinction throughout. One more piece worth understanding before moving to that larger scale data. Not everyone's mouth carries the same risk profile here. Genetics, smoking history, diabetes, and overall immune function all influence one thing: how likely gum inflammation is to progress toward the more permeable state this mechanism depends on. This isn't a story where everyone faces identical odds. It's a story where a controllable daily habit shifts those odds in a measurable direction, regardless of where anyone starts. It's worth naming who else studies this bacteria. Beyond dementia researchers specifically, P. gingivalis and its role in chronic inflammation has also been studied alongside cardiovascular disease and rheumatoid arthritis. This mechanism isn't narrowly specific to the brain. There's also a nutrient level piece worth naming here. It explains why gum tissue is particularly vulnerable in the first place. Building and repairing the collagen-holding gum tissue together requires specific nutrients, the same structural material already discussed elsewhere on this channel, for skin. When that supply runs short, gum tissue repairs itself more slowly. That gives inflammation more time to take hold before the body closes the gap. A single inflammatory source, potentially influencing several different chronic conditions, this channel's audience already thinks about separately. That's exactly the mechanism the next block's numbers are measuring. at a much larger scale. Here's where the evidence moves from mechanism to population-level data and where the numbers get genuinely large. Researchers analyzed South Korea's national health insurance system, tracking over 2.5 million people who underwent cardiovascular and dental screening in 2008. This is worth sitting with as a sample size, not dozens of participants, not hundreds, millions tracked over years, linking dental records to dementia diagnoses. Periodontal disease was associated with a 7% higher risk of all-cause dementia, a small but statistically real number given the size of the study. On the other side, frequent toothbrushing, twice a day or more, was associated with a 17% lower risk. Professional dental cleaning showed a similar protective association, around 9%. Here's the honesty this video won't skip. 7% and 17% are real, statistically significant numbers in a dataset this large. They are not the dramatic, headline-ready figures sometimes attached to this research in less careful coverage. This video reports what the actual study found, not an inflated version of it. There's a second honest limitation worth naming directly. This is observational data, not a controlled experiment. Reverse causation is a real possibility researchers haven't fully ruled out. Early cognitive decline could plausibly make oral hygiene harder to maintain. Worse brushing habits might sometimes be a consequence of early brain changes, not only a cause. The relationship likely runs in both directions to some degree, and this study alone can't fully separate them. A separate, smaller meta-analysis pooling 8 studies and over 260,000 participants found something worth adding here. Regular toothbrushing was linked to significantly slower cognitive decline. That association held even among older adults already diagnosed with moderate to severe dementia. That detail matters beyond the headline number. It suggests this isn't only a prevention story for people currently free of cognitive symptoms. Even in a population already managing dementia, better oral hygiene tracked with a slower rate of further decline. Worth sharing with anyone caring for a parent or spouse with the condition. One more data point worth including, since it approaches this from yet another angle. A separate cohort study used propensity score matching, a technique that reduces bias by pairing similar individuals across groups. People with poor oral health had more than double the Alzheimer's risk compared to those with normal oral health. That's a larger effect size than the Korean cohort's hazard ratios, and it's worth being honest about why. Different studies, different populations, different methods of measuring poor oral health in the first place all produce somewhat different numbers. Taken together, every study cited in this video points the same direction, even if the exact size of the effect varies from one to the next. One study worth naming honestly, since it complicates a clean narrative. A separate German cohort found periodontitis patients reporting higher vitamin C and omega-3 intake than healthy controls. The opposite direction a simple protective story would predict. The most likely explanation is reverse causation again. People already diagnosed with gum disease often get dietary advice to increase these exact nutrients. That shows up in survey data as higher intake among the sicker group. It's a reminder that observational nutrition research carries this same limitation repeatedly, regardless of which nutrient or which disease is being studied. Here's where flossing specifically enters this picture, beyond brushing alone. Toothbrushing reaches the visible surfaces of your teeth. It doesn't reach nearly as well between teeth and just beneath the gum line, precisely where gum disease typically begins and where P. gingivalis tends to concentrate. Interdental cleaning, flossing, or a similar tool, addresses exactly the space brushing alone leaves out. A Korean cohort study compared toothbrushing combined with interdental cleaning against toothbrushing alone. The combined group showed an additional reduction in dementia risk beyond brushing alone. This is genuinely useful. Specific evidence, not simply repeating the brushing data from the previous block. It's worth being direct about technique here, since it changes whether this habit actually reaches gum line bacteria. Flossing that only snaps quickly between teeth without curving gently against each tooth surface misses much of the actual target. A gentle C-shape motion, hugging the side of each tooth down toward the gum line, not into it. That's what reaches the bacteria this mechanism is about. For anyone whose gums bleed when flossing, that's worth addressing directly rather than avoiding the habit. Bleeding usually signals existing inflammation, exactly the vulnerable state described in the mechanism section. The response isn't to stop. Gentle, consistent flossing over 1 to 2 weeks typically reduces that bleeding as gum health improves. A dentist should evaluate bleeding that persists well beyond that. Water flossers are a reasonable alternative for anyone who finds string floss physically difficult, particularly for arthritis or limited dexterity, common concerns after 50. The research behind interdental cleaning generally doesn't distinguish sharply between tools. It focuses more on whether the space between teeth gets cleaned at all. Timing matters less than consistency here too. Flossing before bed tends to be easier to sustain than a rushed morning attempt. Either timing reaches the same mechanism described here. A related consideration worth naming honestly. Antiseptic mouthwash isn't automatically part of the solution here. Many people assume a mouthwash that kills more bacteria is doing more good. Research on a specific ingredient, chlorhexidine, found in several strong antiseptic rinses, complicates that assumption directly. Certain oral bacteria perform a beneficial job unrelated to gum disease. They convert dietary nitrate, found in leafy greens and beets, into compounds your body uses to help regulate blood pressure. Chlorhexidine mouthwash doesn't distinguish between harmful bacteria and this beneficial group. One controlled trial found it reduced oral nitrite production by 90%. A measurable rise in blood pressure appeared within a single day of use. Elevated blood pressure is itself an established risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. Through a completely separate pathway from anything else in this video. That creates a genuinely awkward possibility worth stating plainly. A strong antiseptic mouthwash used to fight the same gum bacteria this video covers may work against a different mechanism, one connected to the same disease. This isn't a call to avoid mouthwash entirely. Milder, over-the-counter formulations without chlorhexidine appear less likely to cause this specific disruption based on the research currently available. It's a reason to be selective about which product gets reached for. Not assuming any antiseptic rinse is automatically protective just because it kills bacteria. There's a food connection here too, and it circles back to 2 ingredients already covered on this channel. Vitamin C's role in gum health isn't a new discovery. It's one of the oldest documented nutrient-disease relationships in medicine. It goes back to 18th century sailors and scurvy, where bleeding, swollen gums were among the first visible signs. Vitamin C is required to build and maintain collagen, the structural protein holding gum tissue together. The same general role it plays in skin, already explained in an earlier video here. A 2021 analysis pooled 15 studies and data on over 8,000 people. Lower blood levels of vitamin C were linked to a higher risk of gum bleeding, even well above levels that would cause full scurvy. A separate clinical trial went further, testing actual supplementation. 98 patients with chronic periodontitis received vitamin C for 3 months. The share of patients with high-category gum bleeding dropped from just over 4% to 2%. The share with only low-level bleeding rose from 59% to nearly 82%. It's worth being honest about the limits here, too. The same way this video has treated every other piece of evidence. A separate systematic review of 6 controlled trials found vitamin C improved bleeding specifically. It didn't significantly change pocket depth or attachment loss, the deeper structural measures. It helps one part of this picture more clearly than the rest. Omega-3 fatty acids, already discussed here for skin health with the same honest adjunct framing, show a related pattern. A large NHANES-based study of over 9,000 adults looked at DHA, one of the primary omega-3s in fatty fish. Highest intake was linked to a 22% lower likelihood of gum disease compared to the lowest. The researchers themselves noted this doesn't prove causation on its own. The same honest caveat this channel already applied when omega-3 first appeared, for a different organ entirely. Neither of these nutrients replaces brushing, flossing, or dental care. What they add is a second food-based layer supporting the same tissue this video has been about. 2 ingredients already sitting in earlier scripts here, for entirely different reasons. There's a reason this channel keeps returning to the same underlying idea. Even in a video about the mouth instead of the gut. This connects to territory already covered here through a shared principle rather than a shared organ. Every mechanism this channel has explained involves inflammation and barrier integrity. Whether that barrier sits in your gut lining, your blood-brain barrier, or now, your gum tissue. A breach in any of them appears to matter more than which specific barrier it is. It's worth being precise about what today's evidence can and can't claim. It doesn't prove that gum disease causes Alzheimer's disease, or that flossing prevents it. What the research supports is narrower, and still worth taking seriously. A real, replicated association at a population scale rarely seen in this kind of research, alongside a documented biologically plausible mechanism explaining how it might work. It's also worth naming the honesty this video leaned on throughout. The gingipains and brain tissue finding is striking but comes from a small sample. The 2.5 million person cohort is large and robust, but its effect sizes are modest, and reverse causation remains a real, unresolved possibility. Presenting this as a guaranteed brain-saving habit would be dishonest. Presenting the actual numbers and their real limitations is what lets you weigh this accurately. That's a deliberate choice this channel keeps making, video after video. A modest, honestly labeled number is more useful than an inflated one. One that collapses the first time someone reads the underlying study. That same standard applies to the mouthwash detail covered earlier. The blood pressure mechanism connecting chlorhexidine to Alzheimer's risk is genuinely indirect, built by connecting several separate lines of research, not one study measuring the whole chain. It's presented here as a reasonable, evidence-informed caution, not as settled proof of an established causal pathway. The vitamin C and omega-3 findings deserve the same careful treatment. The bleeding reduction trial is real, controlled human evidence. The broader population data is genuinely mixed, complicated by exactly the kind of reverse causation already discussed. This video presents both sides rather than only the more flattering one. There's a practical, honest question worth addressing directly before this closes. Someone already diagnosed with gum disease shouldn't wait for a home routine to fix it alone. This mechanism starts with inflammation a dentist can actually treat. Deep cleaning or other periodontal care addresses the underlying problem, not just manages it day to day. Home flossing works best as prevention and maintenance alongside professional care, not as a replacement for it once disease is already present. It's also worth naming who benefits most from paying closer attention here. Anyone with diabetes faces a documented two-way relationship between blood sugar control and gum health, each one capable of worsening the other. Anyone currently smoking faces substantially higher periodontal disease risk to begin with. For both groups, this mechanism carries extra weight beyond what this video has already covered. There's a related, practical note worth adding for that same audience. Blood pressure medication and gum health interact in a smaller way too. Some common medications list dry mouth as a side effect. Reduced saliva flow makes it easier for harmful bacteria to accumulate. That's not a reason to question a prescribed medication. It's a reason to mention it at a dental visit, so extra attention can go toward the exact vulnerability this video has described. Smoking deserves its own direct mention too, since its effect here is unusually large. Smokers require nearly double the vitamin C intake of non-smokers just to reach the same blood levels, on top of already carrying substantially higher rates of gum disease, independent of diet. For anyone managing both smoking and gum health, the nutrient piece of this mechanism carries extra weight, not less. If this connection between your mouth and your brain was new to you, follow this channel. New videos connecting research exactly like this arrive every few days. Go back to where this video started. 53 brains examined. A bacterial toxin present in 96% of them that started in someone's gums. You now know the actual mechanism behind that number. Inflamed gum tissue creating an opening. Specific bacteria crossing into the bloodstream through that opening. A documented, if not fully proven path, from there toward brain tissue. And underneath all of it, a 2.5 million person study, showing that the simplest intervention, brushing and flossing consistently, carries a real, measurable, if modest, protective association. None of this replaces dental care for existing gum disease, and none of it guarantees protection against Alzheimer's specifically. If anything, it gives you a more specific reason to take a habit you already know matters, rather than treating it as a minor daily chore. There's something worth sitting with here, beyond the mechanism itself. For most of medical history, the mouth and the brain were treated as entirely separate systems, examined by entirely separate specialists who rarely compared notes. This video was never about replacing dental care or medical care. It was about the connection sitting quietly between them, backed by real research that most people have simply never heard named. None of this requires anything unusual: a toothbrush, floss, or a water flosser, and a few extra minutes twice a day. The barrier here was never access. It was simply not knowing this connection existed at all. Citrus fruit, bell peppers, and berries, already covered here for skin. Fatty fish too, for the same honest reasons. A realistic routine, nothing new to shop for. A realistic way to actually start tonight if this is genuinely new. 2 minutes of brushing, morning and night. Timer running, if that helps track it honestly. Floss once, ideally before bed, using the gentle C-shape motion already described rather than a quick snap between each tooth. If gums bleed at first, continue gently rather than stopping. Expect that to ease within 1 to 2 weeks as gum health improves. Skip the strong antiseptic rinse unless a dentist has specifically recommended it for active gum disease. A milder alcohol-free formulation, or simply water, is a reasonable default the rest of the time. If today's explanation gave you a new reason to think about an old habit, follow this channel. New videos breaking down research exactly like this arrive every few days. Send this to someone who flosses inconsistently or has never heard their gums connected to their brain this directly. Someone who thinks of oral hygiene as a teeth-only concern, the same way most people did before today. Leave a comment letting us know if this changes how you think about flossing tonight. There's a good chance the research has more to say about it than you'd expect. Think back to how this video opened. 53 brains. A bacterial toxin present in nearly all of them, tracing back to somewhere most people would never think to look. What's changed now isn't the biology itself. It was running exactly the same way before this video and after it. What's changed is what you have now. A name for the mechanism. The actual numbers behind it, honestly presented. And a reason to see 2 minutes with a toothbrush a little differently tonight. Your mouth was never just about your teeth. It was a door, open or closed depending on how you treated it. This video is for educational purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice. Always consult a healthcare professional, including a dentist, for any gum bleeding or inflammation that persists.